Hello, hello, Ederson Oliveira here, and this is the fourth interview with the DNN Summit 2017 presenters. Today I have with me Miguel Gatmaytan and Mark Harle, and yeah, that's the group that we're gonna be talking a bit of an eclectic group, a developer, and a more business-oriented person here. So let's start with you, Miguel. Miguel, if you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your session.
Hey, my name is Miguel Gatmaytan. I work at DNN Corp here at the Langley office. I've been working on both platform and Evoke product lines for about a year or a little over a year now. And I pretty much work in front end. I do a little bit of back end, but mostly just to take a look and see what I need. And my session, I guess, will be about kind of DNN 9. There's a lot of new things that are coming, more modern tech. We're using a lot of React, and we've built a lot of common components. So somebody's going to have to go through and kind of let people know how to use these components. And I think everybody's going to love it. So come to the session, don't miss it.
Perfect, perfect. Very good, very good. So Mark, again, if you can introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your session.
Sure, thanks, Anderson. I'm Mark Harle, and let me apologize for my webcam not working. I'm not exactly sure what the problem there is. But as a bit of background, I've worked in the financial services industry since, essentially all my career, since the mid to late 70s, working on various types of technology platforms from employee benefits and knowledge management, obviously more currently websites, et cetera. And what I'm going to be, and also working on the DNN platform for probably 8 to 10 years now, not as a developer, but really as an admin or a business user. And my session is going to talk about how companies that currently use DNN in one fashion or another can leverage the platform into a very cool state-of-the-art intranet or knowledge management platform for their employees. And how to do that very quickly, 60, 90 days without custom development and at an incredibly affordable price.
Perfect. Okay, going back to you, Miguel. Miguel, before I ask you any question, I just want to say that it's very good to see new blood in the DNN space, in the DNN ecosystem. That's one thing that I keep talking to my DNN buddies, and I said, hey, how come we don't see new blood? How come we don't see fresh blood, in the ecosystem? So it's great. It's reassuring to see new blood in the ecosystem. So thank you for that. Now,
Thanks, man. Happy to be here.
Now, a question to you. So you are a front-end developer, and I assume that your hands are all over DNN 9 as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so DNN 9, pretty much I was part of the architecture a little bit. We had to re-architect. I'm sure you've seen kind of the nightly builds of the new kind of admin experience, as we call it. It's more modern tech with React. There's a little bit of knockout jQuery there for the base of the admin experience, but basically we had to architect how we're going to use React.js to make the admin experience perform in a much, much better way. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. As soon as you use DNN 9, you'll be able to see a huge difference in performance as we're using now APIs instead of postbacks, and it's just a much better overall experience.
Got it.
My hands, yeah, you're right though. My hands are everywhere in DNN 9. I've worked on several modules, as we call it, the persona bar modules. Big places like extensions, that's a feature that everybody uses. That's what DNN is all about, extensibility. So that module was pretty much given to me as my little project. So.
Perfect. Okay. So, and by the way, I mean, you may have answered that, but again, forgive me if I'm gonna ask that again. How long have you been working with DNN Corp?
DNN, I've been working here for about a year and 4 months, maybe.
Got it. And by the way, I mean, it's good as well to have a a Canadian. I mean, I'm Canada as well. You're in Canada as well, so it's good to have a Canadian around. It's not that frequent that I talk and interview another Canadian fellow.
That's good, man. Yeah, we don't have the same Trump drama that's going on in the States right now.
Well, no comments there. Mark, you are there. So again, I'm not gonna go that. I'm not gonna go that route. That's a very dangerous route to that very dangerous territory. But let's go back here, Mark. Now to you. So it's all about your session is really all about intranets. I have to tell you, I may watch your session there because we do have a client that is a big client with about 3,000 employees. They use DNN heavily for their intranet. So I'm very curious to know, what can you tell me is one of the key elements of making an intranet a successful one, regardless if it's DNN or something else, but what is one key element of making a successful intranet?
Sure. Very good question. And a lot of that is not directly related to the technology, regardless of what the technology is. I mean, there's a ton of intranet platforms and tools available, DNN being one that obviously the people attending this are very familiar with. And you certainly need to have the right features and functions to manage content, manage users, manage security roles so people can have access to the right content. All of the kind of the go through the checklist of features that are important. You need that. It needs to be responsive. It needs to be socially enabled so that it's a two-way street for communication. Highly granular with permission so that you can restrict or expose content at a very slow level, not at a page level, but things on a page. It has to be very task oriented and allow you to customize the experience based on that particular individual. A good example of that is a specific space for new hires to facilitate the onboarding. Another example of that is another space for, say, executive leadership, where they can hang out and communicate and collaborate in a private and secure environment. So all of the, there's a fairly decent set of features needed to support that. That DNN certainly does very well once you decide to harness that. But then the other aspect of it, I believe, is the non-technology side of it. But what's the strategy for using that? And that gets to address your organization's internal communication strategy. How do you, as an organization, communicate with your employees? What's your strategy for doing that, and what are your processes for doing that? It's probably, kind of all over the board for a lot of organizations. And so the challenge then is to kind of harness or corral all of that and restructure all of those internal communications so that they are all now essentially under the control of the digital platform. And that may sound a little bit vague, and we'll cover that in more detail during the presentation. But it's really important, I believe, that as an organization does this, that they are looking at how they use the platform to support their ongoing internal communications, because that's really what an intranet is really all about.
Got it. Okay, so just a follow-up question on that point, Mark, is I mean, you talk very proficiently about the topic of intranet. So what's your exposure to that? I mean, have you done many projects on building intranets for companies that you worked for? What's the history there?
So probably the first time I got involved in implementing and designing and implementing an intranet was before the term intranet existed. And this goes back to the early 90s. At that point, I was working for actually I was working for a consulting firm, and our clients were insurance companies looking to have ways to educate their agents and their employees in their business, their products, et cetera. That was before the days of the internet. And so at that point, we started using some other tools. Actually, the main one that's kind of interesting was the old Windows Help Engine, which is at the time a very cool tool for that type of hypertext. And so we started using that to build pretty robust communication platforms for agents and employees and et cetera. And then, so that was in the early 90s, and then that just, I then just continued that on in different capacities and different, using different platforms. Obviously, by the time the late 90s came, all of that migrated to the internet. And so the laptop-based platforms kind of disappeared. But a lot of the fundamentals and the things that you have to do to have a successful platform remain the same. And so we simply leverage that and now are using that to deploy really cool, and I'll use the term knowledge management platform more broad as something more broadly than an intranet, but using that to deliver content and knowledge out to employees and contractors for a company.
Got it. Very good, very good. Going back to you, Miguel. I see on your session description that one of the points at the very end of the description is talking about how to reuse the controls, the React controls, the React components to our own, I guess, our own modules, our own development, so it can keep it consistent, the whole experience of being on DNN. Now, when you say to reuse them, are you talking about extending the persona bar? Are you talking about reusing them within our modules, within our settings? What is it that what do you mean there?
Yeah, well, what we did for this DNN9 release was we created a bunch of common components, stuff like, your single line inputs, your tabs, your text boxes, you got drop downs, and overall throughout the persona bar, we use these common components so that everything looks the same, kind of the same way that DNN had it before with the C# controls, the DNN label controls and stuff like that. But in this case, we have a lot more freedom with the JavaScript. You can attach a lot more events. You can do pretty much anything you can with them. And the whole point of exposing these common components to the community is so that if they wanted to create their own persona bar admin kind of manager, they can reuse our common components so that their module will already adapt to the styles that we've set out for them.
Okay. So again, going back to my question here, so what you're talking about is really reusing them on extending the persona bar to adjust or adapt or extend the persona bar to connect to their modules, isn't it? So it's again an extension, reusing in the form of extensions, in the form of extending the persona bar, correct?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Okay, it was a bit clouded, I guess. So my point is this: if I'm creating a new module right now, it does not use the persona bar. I just have an admin interface there in my module. Can I reuse those components there, or it's just for the persona bar? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense now. You could reuse them anywhere where you have JavaScript or a React app. Even if you didn't have a React app, you should be able to reuse the components. But the main purpose, the main design of it was for it to be inside of the persona bar. It wasn't really designed for it to be outside in a regular DNN module. But that being said, you can still use them as they are NPM packages, and you'll be able to just download them and use them as is. So you can use them anywhere, but we recommend to use them in the persona bar. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense because the styles are for the persona bar.
Got it. Okay, that makes perfect sense. One additional point there. I just got this question yesterday from one DNN community member. He was asking if, okay, so DNN Corp decided to use React. Now, what about Angular? Will I be able to use Angular? And again, I'm not talking about Angular on the personal bar? I'm talking about Angular in general. I guess the answer is yes, but I would like to hear from you.
Yeah, we were actually thinking about, we debated between React and Angular for DNN 9. We kind of fiddled around with both, and we found that React provided a much more lightweight and performant solution. Angular is kind of more of a all-in-one solution. You know, the library itself is kind of designed to solve multiple problems that we didn't really need the other kind of problems that they solve. We didn't have those, so we chose React because it was faster, and it's I think everybody's starting to lean towards React nowadays. The community for React is growing at a very, very fast pace. But yes, you can use our React components in your Angular app.
Okay, perfect. Very good, very good. So going back to you, Mark, I read through the session description, and you mentioned something like the session will focus on three key aspects, three key points. And again, just to recap, you mentioned successful intranet, meeting the requirements, and best practice. So can you, again, unpack a little bit more on those three main points that you're going to be highlighting during your session?
Sure. A lot of that revolves around the belief, at least my belief, that while every company is unique in terms of how they do business and their employee base, et cetera, there's a huge amount of similarity in terms of what makes a successful intranet. So it's not as if an organization needs to start with a blank whiteboard in designing an intranet. It's better to start with best practices and things that have already worked for other organizations. Because the reality is, at least in my opinion, differences, the fundamentals are very similar. So that gets into things like, well, what's the, it revolves around what's the type of content that you're going to be communicating here. And so if you look at it like that, you'll have things like, the obvious employee directory. I want to know Bob's phone number. So what's Bob's address, phone number? I need to be able to look him up and find him really quickly. Just one simple example. Then others are traditional policy manuals, procedure manuals, employee benefit plans, employee handbooks, all of these communication manuals that are generally distributed top down. And then other, what I call content types, are relevant for most companies, things like projects. Every company will engage in projects, so we want to be able to track them. Every company will have certain training resources they make available, so let's track them. Every company will have key performance indicators or KPIs that they use to manage results of organizations and teams, so let's track those. So the point is, there's a whole array of things like that generally apply to, and documents, we need to track documents. So there's an array of these things that apply to most organizations. And so if we have essentially an inventory of those that are pre-built, pre-designed, and pre-configured, or configurable to meet the other 10 to 15% of customization that needs, that gives you a very good start. And that's the way that you can then take something like this and come up with a very rapid implementation, because you don't have to start from a blank sheet of paper. And so that speaks to some of the three things that I'll be talking about in the presentation.
Got it. And just to finalize that point, and you don't need to be too, you don't need to go specific with any specific details there, but you are saying that you can deliver all of that within DNN out of the box, plus a few or many add-ons, many modules that goes on top of DNN, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. Then again, you can go in details during your session. So let's leave the details for the session. Miguel, perfect. Going back to you, quick question. Documentation guidelines, because this is one of the nagging complaints and I know that there's a documentation center right now on the DNN website. I'm just wondering how much documentation will be there, you know, on the start of DNN 9, or this is, you know, something that will come afterwards? What can you tell me about that?
For documentation, right now, as you said, we have the doc center. We have a documentation center person working on it full time. But for DNN 9, we've been using kind of an internal documentation system. We have a style guide. I'm not sure if that's out for the public, actually. You might be able to see it. But we have a full style guide defining all of the colors, all of the spaces in the common components and stuff like that. And then kind of internally, as developers create components, it's kind of our job to keep track of kind of the options that come with a component. And then it will be our job to finish that up and pack it into documentation that will be available to the community. So we'll do our best to kind of outline how to use the common components. Most of the docs that are, I believe Ash is already publishing blogs on how to create a persona bar extension, like a module that you install, and it'll pop up a new kind of menu in the persona bar. So that's already underway before even the release. But most of the documentation will be coming for the common components.
Perfect.
I think it'll be much better than it was before.
Perfect. Very good. Very good. So if I ask you this, Miguel, what is the one thing that you want people that attend to your session leave the session knowing? If there is one single thing, what is that? What is the one top thing? I mean, you're going to be talking about many different things, but what is the one thing that they can make sure that they leave the session knowing?
Well, basically, I want them to understand kind of how to use the components that we've worked so hard on. We put a lot of thought in creating kind of these smaller components. While we're working on them, it seems like a little, like a text box doesn't seem too important, but we've provided a lot of kind of injection points and kind of options that you can specify, and you'll be able to get your app up and running just like that. So by the end of the session, I hope that they're kind of excited to go in and mess around with the common components, create their own interface, and basically take DNN to another level.
Very good, very good. Mark, the same question to you. On your session about Intranet and leveraging DNN for intranets, what is the one single thing that you'll be very happy if people leave the session knowing? What is it?
Sure, Ederson, thank you. So the one thing is very simple, and that is that if you are a user of DNN, you have the ability, by harnessing that in a certain way, you have the ability to stand up a state-of-the-art contemporary intranet for your organization very quickly, say roughly 60 days, without any custom development at a very affordable price.
Perfect. Very good. Right to the point. So I'm done with my points here, with my questions. I just want to open up and see if there's anything else that any one of you want to mention. Let's start with Miguel. Miguel, anything else that you find that's relevant for people to know as well about the session before we end here?
I think, people kind of, I think the DNN community is a little bit behind with React right now. And I kind of want people to start picking it up, because I think front-end development is starting to grow on such a large scale. I mean, you have stuff like Node, you have React, Angular, libraries are going, starting to grow at a tremendous pace. Third-party components are starting to become more and more available, especially for popular libraries like React. I mean, you go on Google, you search for a modal, you have a React modal application, you plug it in and go, and it's working, right? And that's, I just want people to start, picking up on what's modern, and because DNN 9 will be modern, and they need to step their game up for sure.
I have to tell you, I'm loving, because I'm doing a lot of DNN 9 video reviews, so I'm loving the new interface. I'm loving the fact that it's right there You don't have to wait. It comes up. I mean, I'm loving the admin experience. I can tell you this. So thank you very much for
That's
that.
awesome, man. Glad to hear it.
Okay, so Mark, anything else from your side as well? The same point. Anything else before we call the quits here?
No, not really. I really appreciate you inviting me to this and having the opportunity to have this discussion in preparation to the summit. I'm looking forward to it. I think you know, it's, and I like having some non-technical discussions there. I think a lot of the attendees are interested in that. Obviously, it depends on your background. But what I'm trying to do is talk about solutions, and in this case, solutions specific to internal knowledge management. So I'm excited about it, and thanks again for having me here today.
Perfect. So everyone, as you can see, there is always something for any one of you out there that are on the fence, deciding whether or not you should go to DNN Summit. You have technical sessions, you have business sessions, you have marketing sessions, you have even marketing sales sessions. So again, there's something there for each one of you out there. Again, Miguel, thank you very much. Mark, thank you very much for being here, and looking forward to meet you, both of you, in person during DNN Summit. Bye now.